My name is Dr. Madhumita Bandyopadhyay. I'm an associate professor from Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College of Arts, Ghatkopar. Today, I will be talking about communal rift. This is a part of the course Indian National Movement for MA First Year, Semester 1. This is the 4th unit and forms a subtopic of the topic on parallel development. In the earlier units, you have learnt the growth and development of nationalism in India, making it a mass movement. Parallel to the national movement, there was rise of communalism, which led to the partition of India. Therefore, along with independence, the country was divided into two. This unit attempts to examine what led to the rise of communalism during the British rule and also to understand why the Muslim community in India wished to form a separate nation. We start with the learning objectives. This unit introduces you to the concept and implications of communalism. The aims of the units are the following: to understand the meaning of communalism, to analyze the causes of its rise in India during the British period, to describe the factors leading to the establishment of the Muslim League, to discuss the Khilafat movement, to explain the concept and evolution of the two-nation theory, and to describe the events leading to the partition of India. So before we begin with the growth of communalism in India, it would be useful to define the term and understand its implications. What is the definition of communalism? Communalism is the idea that religion is a most important distinction between people. Hence, a communalist would group people by the religion and not by their cultural or geographical background. Communalism or communal ideology consists of three basic elements or stages. First, it is a belief that people who follow the same religion have common secular interests, that is, common political, economic, social and cultural interests. The second element of communal ideology rests on the notion that in a multi-religious society like India, the secular interests, that are the social, cultural, political and economic interests of the followers of one religion, are dissimilar and divergent from the interest of the followers of another religion. In the third stage of communalism, the interest of the followers of different religions or of different communities are seen to be mutually incompatible, antagonistic and hostile. Thus, the communalists assert at this stage that the Hindus and the Muslims cannot have common secular interests and are bound to be opposed to each other. Sometimes, communalism is seen something that has survived from the past and has its roots in the medieval period. However, while communalism uses and is based on many elements of ancient and medieval ideologies, basically it is a modern ideology and a political trend. Its social roots, as well as its social, political and economic objectives, lie very much in the modern period of Indian history. It expresses the social urges and serves the political needs of modern social groups, classes and forces. Although India is a multi-religious country, religion is not the cause of communalism. In fact, communalism arises when religion serves politics. As K.M. Ashraf describes communalism as mazhab ki siyasi dukandari, which means political trade in religion. However, religion was used as a mobilizing factor in communalism. In fact, religiosity, which means a tendency to let religion and religious emotions intrude into non-religious or non-spiritual ways of life, was more responsible for communalism. Let us now see what were the other causes for the rise of communalism. Communalism in India was not merely a question of antagonism between the Hindus and the Muslims. Besides the Hindus and the Muslims, there was a third aspect in the communal triangle, and that is the British rulers. They interposed themselves between the Hindus and the Muslims, forming the base of the communal triangle. Now let us see what the causes are. 1. British policy. British rule and its policy of divide and rule bore special responsibility for the growth of communalism in India. This was done with the intention of weakening the growing national movement and welding of the Indian people into a nation. Sir John Strachey, who was an eminent British civilian, wrote, "The existence side by side of hostile creeds among the Indian people is one of the strong points in our political position in India." The colonial rulers, therefore, posed themselves as the defender of the rights of the minorities. They justified the maintenance of British rule by highlighting Hindu-Muslim disunity and the need to protect the minorities from domination and suppression by the majority. Communalism could not have developed to such an extent as to divide the country if it did not have the powerful support of the colonial state. There were different ways through which British encouraged communalism. Firstly, they consistently treated Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs as separate communities and socio-political entities which had little in common. India was considered to be a land with structured, mutually exclusive and antagonistic religion-based communities, which was far from being a nation or nation in making. Secondly, official favor and patronage was always extended by the British to the communalist. Thirdly, the communal press, persons and agitations were shown extraordinary tolerance by the British government. Fourth, the communal demands were readily accepted by the British government, thus politically strengthening communal organization and their hold over the people. For example, in 1932, the Communal Award accepted all the major communal demands of the time. Fifth, the British readily accepted communal organizations and leaders as the real spokespersons for their communities, while the nationalist leaders were treated as representing a microscopic minority, that is, the elite. Sixth, separate electorates introduced by the British served as an important instrument for the development of communal politics. And lastly, the communal government encouraged communalism through a policy of non-action against it. On the contrary, government freely rewarded communal leaders, intellectuals and government servants with titles, positions of profit, high salaries, etc. The British administration also followed a policy of relative inactivity and irresponsibility in dealing with communal riots. The administration also seldom made proper preparations or preventive measures to meet situations of communal tension, as they did in the case of nationalist and other popular movements. Now we go on to see the other cause of communalism, which is politics of popular mobilization. The ideology of communalism emerged as a consequence of modern politics which arose in the post-1857 period. It triggered due to politics of popular participation based on the creation of mobilization of public opinion. In fact, communalism arose in the Indian society under the impact of colonialism and the need to struggle against it. The growing political, administrative and economic unification of regions and the country, the process of making India into a nation, the developing contradiction between colonialism and the Indian people, and the formation of modern social classes and stratas called for new ways of seeing one's common interest. This was followed by the birth of new politics based on the politicization and mobilization of an ever-increasing number of Indian people. The process of grasping the new emerging political reality and social relations required the spread of modern ideas of nationalism, cultural linguistic development and class struggle. However, wherever their growth was slow and partial, people used the pre-modern categories of self-identity such as caste, locality, religion, region, race, sect and occupations to evolve new identities and ideologies. In India in particular, religious consciousness was transformed into communal consciousness in some parts of the country and among some sections of the people. This was because there were some factors in the Indian situation which favored its growth. It served the needs of certain sections of the society and certain social and political forces. The next cause is colonial economy. Colonial character of the Indian economy, leading to underdevelopment and economic stagnation, produced conditions which were conducive to division and antagonism within the Indian society. Throughout the 20th century, in the absence of industrial development and the growth of education, health and other social and cultural services, unemployment was an acute problem in India. Because of economic stagnation, there was intense competition among individuals for government jobs, in professions like law and medicine, and in business for customers and markets. In fact, government service was the main avenue of employment for the middle classes. For example, as late as 1951, 1.2 million persons were covered by the Factory Acts, while 3.3 million got employment in government service. Consequently, communal politics was organized under government jobs, educational concessions and the like, as also political positions, that is, seats in legislative councils, municipal bodies, etc. They competed for these limited jobs through the system of communal reservations and nominations. This gave a certain aura of validity to communal politics. The next cause of communalism was class conflict, represented as communal conflict. Communalism often distorted or misinterpreted social tension and class conflict between the exploiters and the exploited belonging to different religions as communal conflict. What made communal distortion possible was the feature of Indian social development in several parts of the country. The religious distinction coincided with social and class distinction. Here, most of the exploiting sections, that is the landlords, merchants and moneylenders, were upper caste Hindus, while the poor and exploited were the Muslims. Consequently, propaganda by Muslim communalists that Hindus were exploiting Muslims, or by Hindu communalists that Muslims were threatening Hindu property or economic interests, could succeed, even while this was wholly incorrect. Thus, for example, the struggle between the tenant and the landlord in East Bengal and Malabar, and the peasant debtor and merchant moneylender in Punjab could be portrayed by the communalists as a struggle between the Muslims and the Hindus. In reality, the struggle of the peasants for the emancipation was inevitable. But the question was, what type of ideological political content it would acquire. Both the communalist and the colonial administration stressed the communal as against the class aspects of agrarian exploitation and oppression. Thus, they held that Muslim peasants and debtors were being exploited not as peasants and debtors but as Muslims. In many cases, a communal form is given to a social conflict not by participants but also by the observer, the official, the journalist, the politician, and finally even the historian. It is important to note in this context that Hindu zamindars in Bengal had acquired control over land not because they were Hindus, but as a result of the historical process of the spread of Islamic religion in India, and also in Bengal among lower caste and classes. Communalism also represented a struggle between two upper classes and strata for power, privileges and economic gains. Belonging to different religions, these classes used communalism to mobilize the popular support of their co-religionalists in their mutual struggle. Thus was, for example, the case in Western Punjab where the Muslim landlords opposed the Hindu moneylenders, and in the East Bengal where the Muslim Jagirdars, that is the small landlords, opposed the Hindu zamindars. Above all, communalism developed as a weapon of economically and politically reactionary social classes and political forces, that is the semi-feudal landlords and ex-bureaucrats, merchants and moneylenders, and the colonial state. Communal leaders and parties were in general allied with these classes and forces. By adopting communalism, it could divert popular struggles to prevent the masses from understanding the socio-economic and political forces responsible for their social condition, to prevent unity on national and class lines, and to turn the attention from the real national and socio-economic problems. Communalism thereby enabled the upper classes and the colonial rulers to utilize the middle classes to serve their own needs. Communalism thus became a channel through which the politics of the middle class were placed at the service of colonialism and Jagirdar classes. Communalism became a means through which communalism was able to extend its narrow base to sections of workers, peasants, middle classes, and the bourgeoisie whose interests were otherwise in contradiction with colonialism. Now let's see the next cause of communalism, that is, communal overtones in nationalist thought and propaganda. A strong contributory factor in the growth of communalism was a pronounced Hindu tinge in much of the nationalist thought and propaganda in the beginning of the 2nd century by the extremist leaders. They tended to emphasize ancient Indian culture to the exclusion of medieval Indian culture. Thus, Tilak used Ganesh Puja and Shivaji festival to propagate nationalism, while anti-partition of Bengal began with the dip in the river Ganges. Many writers like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee and others referred to the Muslims as foreigners in their writings. The Muslim rulers and officials were portrayed as tyrants, leading to alienation of the Muslims from the Indian national movement. It also enabled the colonial government and the communalists to convince the Muslim population that the success of the national movement would eventually set up Hindu rule in the country. Moreover, the Hindu tinge created a rank of Hindu communalists and spread a Muslim tinge among the Muslim nationalists. The next cause is communalism in writing of Indian history. A communal and distorted, unscientific view of Indian history was a major instrument in the spread of communal ideology. To begin with, James Mill described the ancient period of Indian history as the Hindu period, while the medieval period was considered as the Muslim period. The later historians also followed his footsteps. There were wrong notions of Indian medieval history, where all the Muslims were represented as rulers, while all the Hindus as the ruled. The Hindu communalist described the rule of medieval Muslim rulers as foreign rule because of their religion. Moreover, they relied on the myth that Indian society reached the zenith of cultural achievements during the ancient period of India, while the medieval period experienced a decay due to Muslim rule. The contribution of the medieval period in the development of various aspects like art, architecture, science, technology was completely overlooked. Now let us go into the next sub-point of the course, that is establishment of the Muslim League. Now we have looked into the causes of communalism. Now we go on to see how this communalism gave rise to a political organization which is called as the Muslim League. Let us look into the background. The All India Muslim League was, as I just told you, a political organization established in India in December 1906. Its origin can be traced to the Aligarh movement, which was formed originally to promote modern education among the Muslims by Syed Ahmad Khan, who was one of the notable Indian in the 19th century. He began his educational activities without any communal bias. The numerous scientific societies that he founded in the 1860s consisted of both Hindus and Muslims. He founded the Aligarh College. This college received aid from Hindus, and its faculty and students comprised of both Hindus as well as Muslims. Syed Ahmad Khan preached the commonness of Hindus and Muslims till the founding of the Congress in 1885. Thus, for example, he said in 1884, "Do you not inhabit this land? Are you not buried in it or cremated on it? Surely you live and die on the same land. Remember, the Hindus and the Muslims are religious terms. Otherwise, Hindus and Muslims and Christians who live in this country are by virtue of this fact one Qawm." Qawm means nation and community. Ironically, communalism in India got its initial start in the 1880s when Syed Ahmad Khan counterpoised it to the national movement initiated by the National Congress. In 1887, Dufferin, the Viceroy, and A. Colvin, the Lieutenant Governor of UP, launched a frontal public attack on the National Congress once its anti-imperialist edge became clear. Syed Ahmad, believing that the Muslims' share in the administrative post and in professions could be increased only by professing and proving loyalty to the colonial rulers, decided to join in the attack. He and his followers thus gradually laid the foundation of all basic themes of communal ideology as it was to be propagated in the first half of the 20th century. A basic theme was that Hindus, because they were majority, would dominate Muslims and totally override the interests of the smaller community. The British were needed to safeguard Muslims as a minority. In the Indian context, said Syed Ahmad, they were the best guardians of Muslim interest. Muslims must, therefore, remain loyal and oppose the National Congress. The theme of a permanent clash of Hindu and Muslim interests were also brought forth. Giving up his earlier views, he now said that India could not be considered as a nation. He declared that the Congress was a Hindu body whose major objectives were against Muslim interest. Objecting to the Congress demand for democratic elections, Syed Ahmad said that this would mean that Muslims would not be able to guard their interests, for, he said, it would be like a game of dice in which one man had 4 dice and the other only 1. Any system of election, he said, would put power into the hands of the Bengalis or of Hindus of the Bengali type, which would lead to Muslims falling into a condition of utmost degradation and the ring of slavery being put on them by the Hindus. Syed Ahmad Khan and his co-workers also demanded safeguards for Muslims in government jobs, legislative councils, and district boards, and recognition of the historical role and political importance of Muslims so that their role in legislative councils should not be less than that of the Hindus. At the same time, Syed Ahmad and his followers did not create a counter-communal political organization because the British authorities at the same time frowned upon any politicization of the Indian people. Syed Ahmad held that any agitational politics would tend to become anti-government and seditious and to create suspicion of disloyalty among the rulers. He therefore asked Muslims to shun all politics and remain politically passive, that is, non-agitational in their approach. In August 1888, Syed Ahmad set up the United Indian Patriotic Association with the avowed object of countering the Congress propaganda and policy in England and in India and to wean away people from the Congress. This was followed a few years later, that is in 1893, by the exclusively sectarian Muhammad Anglo-Oriental Defence Association of Upper India to keep Muslims aloof from political agitation and to strengthen British rule in India. The colonial rulers were quick to see the inherent logic of communalism and the theory of the official protection of minorities, and from the beginning actively promoted and supported communalism. The Muslim communalists continued to follow the politics of loyalty after Syed's death. They openly sided with the government during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal during 1905 and 6 and considered the Muslim supporters of the movement as vile traitors to Islam and as Congress touts. Now, the next very important event was the Shimla deputation and the acceptance of the principle of communal electorates on 1st October 1906. The imperial administrators were all convinced that adequate counterpouses to the growing strength of Indian National Congress must be found if the British rule in India was to be stable. One such counterpoise thought about was the official acceptance of separate Muslim electorates, that is, reservation of seats for the Muslim community and election to such seats to be made by separate Muslim electorates. The opportunity presented itself because a new scheme of constitutional reforms was being considered. Inspired by Principal Archbold of MAO College, Aligarh, Aga Khan waited in a deputation of Lord Minto at Shimla on 1st October 1906. The deputationist expressed sentiments of loyalty to the British Crown, appreciated the British government's policy of introducing further reforms, but expressed apprehension that if the principle of election was introduced without conceding reservation of seats for the Muslims, it would prove detrimental to their interest. They demanded reservation of seats for the Muslim community not only on the basis of their population but on the basis of their political importance and their services in the defense of their empire. Lord Minto accepted the Muslim demand for separate communal electorates. In the wake of this fateful Shimla deputation, the Muslim leaders mooted the idea of a central Muhammad association to exclusively protect the interests of the Muslim community. Therefore, the All India Muslim League was formally inaugurated on 30th of December 1906. It had the following aims and objectives. A. To promote among Indian Muslims feelings of loyalty towards the British government and to remove any misconception that may arise as to the intentions of the government with regard to any of its measures. B. To protect the political and other rights of the Indian Muslims and to place their needs and aspirations before the government in temperate language. And C. so far as possible without prejudice to the objects mentioned under A and B, to promote friendly relations between Muslims and communities of India. Thus, from its very inception, the Muslim League was a communal body established to look after the political rights and interests of the Muslim community alone. The All India Muslim League was founded by a group of big zamindars, ex-bureaucrats and other upper-class Muslims like Aga Khan, the Nawab of Dhaka, Nawab Mohsin-ul-Mulk. Founded as a loyalist, communal and conservative political organization, the League supported the partition of India, raised the slogan of separate Muslim interests, demanded separate electorates and safeguards for Muslim in government services, and reiterated all the major themes of communal politics and ideology enunciated earlier by Sayyid Ahmad and his followers. The true political ideas of the League are apparent from Nawab Wakar-ul-Mulk's speech delivered at Aligarh. He said, "God forbid, if the British rule disappears from India, Hindus will lord over it, and we will be in constant danger of our life, property and honor. The only way for the Muslims to escape this danger is to help in the continuance of the British rule." One of the major objectives of the Muslim League was to keep the emerging intelligentsia among Muslims from joining the Congress. Its activities were directed against the Indian National Congress and Hindus and not against the colonial regime. The colonial authorities and the communalists evolved another powerful instrument for the spread and consolidation of communalism in separate electorates, which were introduced in the Molly Minto reforms of 1907. Under this system, Muslim voters and later Sikhs and others were put in separate constituency from which only Muslims could vote. Separate electorates turned elections and legislative councils into arenas of communal conflict. Since the voters were exclusively the followers of one religion, the candidates did not have to appeal to voters belonging to other religions. They could therefore make blatantly communal appeals, and voters who listened to these appeals were gradually trained to think and vote communally, and in generally to think in terms of communal power and progress, and to express their socio-economic grievances in the communal terms. The system of reservation of seats and the weightage in legislatures, government services, educational institutions, etc. also had the same consequences. Now we move on to the next topic, that is Khilafat movement. The younger Muslim intellectuals were dissatisfied with the loyalist, anti-Hindu and slavish mentality of the upper class leadership of the Muslim League. They were increasingly drawn to modern and radical nationalist ideas. The militantly nationalist Ahrar movement was founded at this time under the leadership of Maulana Muhammad Ali, Hakim Ajmal Khan, Hassan Imam, Maulana Zafar Ali Khan and Mazhar-ul-Haq. In their efforts, they got support from a section of orthodox ulema, that is scholars, especially those belonging to the Deoband school. Another orthodox scholar to be attracted to the national movement was the young Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who was educated at the famous Al-Azhar University at Cairo and who propagated his rationalist and nationalist idea in his newspaper Al-Hilal, which he brought out in 1912 at the age of 24. After an intense struggle, the nationalist young Muslims came to the fore in the Muslim League. They also became active in the Congress. In 1912, the brilliant Congress leader M.A. Jinnah was invited to join the League. It also adopted self-government as one of its objectives. In the same year, Aga Khan resigned as the president of the League. From 1912 to 1924, the young nationalists began to overshadow the loyalists in the League, which began to move nearer to the policies of the Congress. Unfortunately, their nationalism was flawed insofar as it was not fully secular. It had a strong religious and pan-Islamic tinge. In instead of understanding and opposing the economic and political consequences of modern imperialism, they fought it on the ground that it threatened the Caliph and the holy places. Quite often, their appeal was to the religious sentiments. This religious tinge or approach did not immediately clash with nationalism. Rather, it made its adherents anti-imperialist. It encouraged nationalist trend among urban Muslims. But in the long run, it proved harmful as it encouraged the habit of looking at political questions from the religious point of view. The Indian Muslims were incensed when they discovered that their loyalty had been purchased during the war by assurances of generous treatment of Turkey after the war, a promise British statesmen had no intention of fulfilling. The Muslims regarded the Caliph of Turkey as their spiritual head and was naturally upset when he found that he would not retain control of the holy places, which was his duty as a Caliph to protect. By the end of the first quarter of 1920, the Khilafat leaders were told quite clearly that they should not expect anything more and that the Treaty of Sevres, signed with Turkey in May 1920, made it amply clear that the dismemberment of the Turkish Empire was complete. Turkey was deprived of Syria, Palestine, Arabia, and other Asiatic zones of the Turkish Empire. They argued that since their holy places were situated in these territories, they should always be under the rule of the Sultan of Turkey, who was also the Khalifa or the religious head of the Muslims all over the world. Mahatma Gandhiji, who had been in close touch with the Khilafat leaders, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, for quite some time, and was especially invited to the Khilafat conference in 1919, had all along been sympathetic to their cause. Especially, he felt that the British had committed a breach of faith by making promises that they had no intention of keeping. In February 1920, he suggested to the Khilafat committee that it adapt a program of non-violent non-cooperation to protest the government's behavior. On 9 June 1920, the Khilafat committee at Allahabad unanimously accepted the suggestion of non-cooperation and asked Gandhiji to lead the movement. Thus, the Khilafat issue drew the Muslims into the orbit of the national movement. The ulema or the Muslim divines formed their organization Jamiat ul Ulema in 1919. It declared its support to the demand of the Khilafat conference. It exhorted the Indian Muslims to participate in the non-cooperation movement, the first nationalist mass struggle in India, which was started by the Congress with the support of the Khilafat conference and which had for its aim the redressing of the injustice of the Treaty of Sevres, the withdrawal of repressive measures of government in Punjab and other parts of the country, and the establishment of Swaraj. The Muslims in great numbers responded to the call of their leaders and participated in the movement, leading to a unique fraternization between the Hindus and the Muslims for the first time. Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, the two brothers, and a number of other Indian Muslims were imprisoned in the course of the movement in all its phases. Maulana Hazrat Mohani, presiding over the session of the Muslim League at Ahmedabad in 1921, said in his presidential speech, "The Muslims should realize that by establishing the Republic of India, their gain will be twofold. Firstly, as citizens of a democratic republic, they will enjoy equal rights and receive the same benefits as others. And secondly, by curtailing the British sphere of influence, they will give the Islamic world the respite needed for the development of constructive activities." The Khilafat movement had a great significance from the point of view of the political consciousness evolution among the Indian Muslims. It revealed that the political consciousness, which was formerly restricted to the aristocratic and the upper middle strata of the Muslim community, had grown among a section of Muslim masses also. It was true that the Khilafat issue was a religious issue, but linked up with the struggle for Swaraj, it had the effect of raising the national consciousness of the Muslims. Also, for the first time, large sections of the Hindus and the Muslims collaborated for a national goal, the goal of self-government for India. They participated in various forms of direct action decided upon by the united leadership of the Congress and political Muslim organizations. There were massive protests, strikes and acts of civil disobedience spread across India. Hindus and Muslims collectively offered resistance which were largely peaceful. However, the Ali brothers began distancing themselves from Gandhi and the Congress. The Ali brothers criticized Gandhi's extreme commitment to non-violence and severed their ties with them after he suspended all non-cooperation movement after the killing of 23 policemen at Chauri Chaura in 1922. The deposition of Muhammad VI as Sultan and Khalif and the installing of Abdul Majid in his place as the Caliph only by the Turkish people in 1922 accentuated the feeling of despondency among the Indian Muslims. Although holding talks with the British and containing their activities, the Khilafat struggle weakened as Muslims were divided between the working for the Congress, the Khilafat cause and the Muslim League. The final blow came when the Turkish people themselves, under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Pasha, overthrew the Ottoman rule, secularized the Turkish state by separating religion from state. Now we go to the next topic, that is the two-nation theory. Two-nation theory was the basis for the partition of India in 1947. It stated that the primary identity of Muslims in the Indian subcontinent is their religion rather than their language or ethnicity. And therefore, Indian Muslims and Hindus are two distinct nationalities regardless of ethnic or other commonalities by every ideological definition. Therefore, Muslims should have an autonomous homeland in the Muslim majority areas of British India for the safeguard of their political, cultural, social rights within or without a united India. The poet and the political thinker Muhammad Iqbal is considered to be the originator of the idea of a separate Muslim state for the Indian Muslims and is supposed to have given the necessary emotional content to the movement. Inspired by the spirit of pan-Islamism, Iqbal declared at the Allahabad session of the All India Muslim League held in 1930, "I have no hesitation in declaring that if the principle that the Indian Muslim is entitled to full and free development on the lines of his own culture and tradition in his own Indian homeland is recognized as the basis of a permanent communal settlement, I would like to see the Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, Sindh and Baluchistan amalgamated into a single state. Self-government within the British Empire or without the British Empire, the formation of a consolidated Northwest Indian Muslim state appears to me to be the fatal destiny of the Muslims, at least of the Northwest India." The idea of a separate homeland for Muslims to be called Pakistan took a definite shape in the mind of a young undergraduate at Cambridge whose name was Rahmat Ali. He visualized the Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, also called Afghan Province, Kashmir, Sindh and Baluchistan as a national home of the Indian Muslims, and he coined the word Pakistan in 1933. The word Pakistan was formed by taking the initials of the first four and last of the fifth. Rahmat Ali maintained that Hindus and Muslims were fundamentally distinct nations. He wrote, "Our religion, culture, history, tradition, literature, economic system, laws of inheritance, succession and marriage are fundamentally different from those of the Hindus. These principles are not confined to the broad basic principles. They extend to the minute details of our lives. We, Hindus and Muslims, do not interdine. We do not intermarry. Our national customs and calendars, even our diet and dress are different." It was at the session of 1940 of the All India Muslim League held at Lahore in 1940 that the resolution embodying the demand for Pakistan or the establishment of sovereign states of the Muslims on the basis of two-nation theory was adopted. Making a clear declaration of the Hindus and Muslims as separate nationalities, M.A. Jinnah said, they, that is the Hindus and the Muslims, are not religions in the strict sense of the word, but are in fact different and distinct social orders, and it is a dream that Hindus and Muslims belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs, literatures, to yoke together two such nations under a single state, one of a numerical minority and other as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be so built up for the government of such a state. Demanding the partition of India, the Muslim League passed the resolution. It is the considered view of this session of the All India Muslim League that no constitutional plan would be workable in this country or acceptable to the Muslims unless it is designed on the following basic principle, that is, that geographically contiguous units are demarcated into regions which should be so numerically in a majority as in the northwestern and eastern zones of India should be grouped to constitute Indian states in which the constituent units shall be autonomous and sovereign. This resolution did not specify the areas in the proposed state of Pakistan. In 1942, Jinnah explained to Professor Copeland that Pakistan would be a Muslim state or states comprising Northwest Frontier Province, Punjab and Sindh on one side of India and Bengal on the other. He did not mention Balochistan and Assam, nor did he claim Kashmir and Hyderabad. However, in a memorandum to the Cabinet Mission on 12th May 1946, the Muslim League demanded the 6 Muslim provinces, that is Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, Balochistan, Sindh, Bengal, Assam, which shall be grouped as one group. Thus, the Lahore session of the Muslim League gave it an ambition and a program. Henceforth, the demand for Pakistan became as much an article of faith for the Indian Muslims as that of their holy book, the Quran. The League held its session at Madras in 1941, when Jinnah in his presidential address remarked, "We do not want under any circumstances a constitution of an all-India character with one government at the centre. We are determined to establish the status of an independent nation and an independent state in this subcontinent." The protagonists of Pakistan rejected the scheme of a federal state for India, with a central cabinet responsible to a central legislature retaining control over such vital matters such as defence, communication, foreign affairs, etc. They declared that a central legislature would be dominated by a Hindu majority, since the Hindus formed the majority of Indian people. Though the Muslim League had still not published any authoritative scheme giving a concrete and detailed idea of the nature of the autonomous sovereign Muslim states and their state and economic systems, individual Muslim intellectuals had evolved and published their own schemes. Prominent among these schemes were those of Punjabi Aligarh professors Dr. Latif, Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan, Rahmat Ali and Sir Abdullah Harun Committee. These schemes, though differing from one another, agreed regarding the basic premise that the Hindus and the Muslims in India were two distinct nations. We now move on to the next topic, that is partition. We look into the various steps through which India was partitioned. The partition of India was the partition of the British Indian Empire, which led to the creation on 14th August and 15th August 1947, respectively, of the sovereign states of the Dominion of Pakistan and the Union of India. The partition of India was based on the two-nation theory put forth by the All India Muslim League, which was established in 1906 with the avowed object of protecting the political rights of the Muslims in India. The League participated in the Khilafat movement and fought hand in hand with the Congress against the imperialist British. However, soon after, their relations soured, leading ultimately to the partition of India. Let us look into the events that took place after the Khilafat movement, which led to the partition of India. The first event is Simon Commission. The appointment of the Simon Commission in 1928, composed exclusively of the non-Indians, to make constitutional reforms in India, created almost universal resentment among the Indian people. All political parties decided upon its boycott. Even the League, which was predominantly led by the Muslim conservatives, could not be unanimous on the question of cooperation with it. The League consequently split. One section led by Sir Muhammad Shafi, Malik Firooz Khan Noon, and Sir Muhammad Iqbal met at Lahore under the presidency of Sir Muhammad Shafi. It passed a resolution welcoming the commission. The other section of the League held its conference at Calcutta under the presidency of Jinnah. It passed a resolution boycotting the commission. Next, the Nehru Committee Report. The Indian National Congress had published the Nehru Committee Report, which outlined the basic features of the Constitution of India. The committee recommended a scheme of joint electorate with reservation of seats, the separation of Sindh, and the elevation of Balochistan and Northwest Frontier Province to the status of other provinces. It condemned the scheme of separate electorates. Further, it was decided that the reservation of seats, both in the central legislature and provincial legislatures, should be determined by the proportion of the Muslims to the total population. The League, through Jinnah, its accredited leader, asked the Congress to introduce a number of amendments, being that 1/3 of the seats in the central legislature be reserved for the Muslim community. The Congress refused to agree to the proposed amendment, and the prospect of an alliance between the Congress and the League for a joint struggle vanished. Next is the 14 points of Jinnah. Jinnah thereafter in 1929 published his famous 14 points, which became the basis of the propaganda campaign of the League subsequently. The proposals embodied in the 14 points ran counter to the most important suggestions made in the Nehru Committee Report and included, among others, the establishment of a federal state with the residuary powers vested in the provinces, the Muslim representation in the central legislature to be not less than 1/3 Muslim ministers in any central and provincial cabinet which might be formed. Soon after, a split took place between the nationalist Muslims and the conservative section within the League. The former desired to support the Nehru report with minor modifications. They formed the Nationalist Muslim Party. The nationalist Muslims enthusiastically participated in the civil disobedience movement. Next, the Communal Award. The Aga Khan unofficially represented the League at the Round Table Conference. In the absence of agreement among the Indian groups at the conference over the communal question, Ramsay MacDonald, the British premier, announced the Communal Award in 1932, creating separate electorates for the depressed classes and the other minorities. After 1933, the Muslim League began to reorganize and consolidate itself under the leadership of Jinnah. It elected him as its president and decided upon its program of intensified political activity. Now, the next important event is the elections of 1937. The first elections for the provincial legislative councils under the Government of India Act 1935 were held in 1937. The Muslim League contested the elections to various legislative bodies but achieved moderate success. Out of the 485 reserved Muslim seats, the League could capture only 110 seats. Even in the Muslim majority provinces of Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, Bengal and Sindh, the League was trounced by rival Muslim parties. The Congress gained an absolute majority in Bombay, Madras, UP, Bihar, Orissa and the central provinces and was the single largest party in the Northwest Frontier Province. The Congress decided to accept office in July 1937. The Muslim League hoped to form coalition ministries with the Congress in provinces like Bengal, Assam and the Punjab and desired the Congress to take Muslim League ministers in UP and Bihar. The Congress, consistent with its principles and policies of non-communal outlook and policies, the liberation of the country, advised the Muslim League members to sign the Congress pledge and become its members if they desired to accept the responsibilities of the office. Jinnah dubbed these moves of the Congress as a calculated policy against the Muslim League. He leveled sweeping allegations against the Congress ministries and alleged that the Congress was a Hindu organization out to crush all minorities. He came to the conclusion that the Muslims could expect neither justice nor fair play from the Congress ministries. In 1938, the Muslim League appointed a committee under the chairmanship of Raja of Pirpur to report on the oppressions of the Muslims in what is called the Hindu Congress province. The report observed that the vast majority of Hindu members of the Congress were Hindus who strived to establish a purely Hindu Raj. The general attitude towards the Congress was, the Muslims think that no tyranny can be as great as the tyranny of the majority. The Congress might have erred in not forming composite coalition governments in the provinces comprising both the congressmen and the leaguers, thus creating the impression that it aimed at the monopoly of power. Its Vidya Mandir scheme might have a Hindu flavor. There have been instances of conscious and unconscious favor being shown to some individual Hindus by some Congress ministers. But the leagues claim that the Congress government pursued a deliberate policy of suppressing the Muslim community and establishing the Hindu hegemony over it was total travesty of fact and a total untruth. In October 1939, the Congress ministers resigned when the British government declared India as a belligerent state in the Second World War without formal reference to the Indian public opinion. The Muslim League observed that as a day of deliverance and thanksgiving, as a mark of relief that the Congress regime had ceased to function. Now we go on to the next topic, that is the August Offer 1949. In response to the Congress offer for cooperation with the British government in the Second World War, conditional on its declaration of the full independence of India and the formation of a provisional national government at the centre, Lord Linlithgow, the Viceroy, in August 1940, offered the plan of setting up a constitution-making body after the war, but assured the minorities that the British government would not agree to any system of government whose authority was directly denied by large and powerful elements in India's national life. The Muslim League welcomed this part of the August offer and passed the resolution. The partition of India is the only solution of the most difficult problem of India's future constitution. The next important incident was the Cripps mission in 1942 and the encouragement to the separatist forces. The Cripps plan, that is March-April 1942, carried further Muslim League's demand for the partition of India. The draft declaration of the British government contained the provision for acceptance of the new constitution of India to be framed after the end of the war, subject to the condition any province of British India might refuse to accept the new constitution and choose to retain its existing constitutional position, provision being made for its subsequent accession to the Indian Union if it so decided. With such non-acceding provinces, if they so desire, the British government would be prepared to agree upon a new constitution, giving them the same full status as the Indian Union. The Muslim League rejected the Cripps plan and reiterated the demand for Pakistan. The Muslim League observed March 23, 1943, the Pakistan Day. Jinnah sent a message to the Muslim population of India stating that the scheme of Pakistan was the final national goal of Muslim India. The League, in a resolution on April 20, endorsed the view. Raja Gopalachari formula and the Desai Liaquat formula. Meanwhile, in March 1944, C. Raja Gopalachari evolved a formula with the full approval of Gandhiji for Congress-League cooperation on the basis of Pakistan. The scheme embodying the formula was, the League would endorse the demand of independence and cooperate with the Congress in forming a provisional government in a transitional period. At the end of the war, a plebiscite of all the inhabitants in the Muslim majority areas in the northwest and the northeast would decide whether or not they should form a separate state. In the event of a separation, agreements would be made for defense, communication, and other essential matters. These terms could be binding only in case of transfer of power and responsibility for the government of India. Jinnah did not accept the proposal as he contended that the Muslims alone were entitled to vote for partition and not the whole population of the disputed areas. Therefore, the right of self-determination, which he claimed for the Muslims, was to be denied to the non-Muslims in those areas. Gandhiji refused to accept this position or the postulate of a separate nationhood. The League wanted the Congress to accept the two-nation theory without the plebiscite of the whole population. Jinnah was also opposed to a common centre concerned with defence, commerce, communication, etc. Efforts were made to end the deadlock, and Bhulabhai Desai, who was the leader of the Congress party in the Central Legislative Assembly, met Liaquat Ali Khan, the deputy leader of the Muslim League party in that assembly, and gave him the draft of a proposal for the formation of the interim government at the Congress, consisting of A. Equal number of persons nominated by the Congress and the League in the Central Legislature, B. Representatives of the minorities, C. The Commander-in-Chief. But no settlement could be reached between the Congress and the League even on those lines. While in India the constitutional deadlock continued, the war in Europe came to an end on 1st of May 1945. Now, the next important event is Wavell Plan and the communal impasse. Lord Wavell, the Governor-General, made an attempt to resolve the deadlock. Ameri, the Secretary of State, announced in the House of Commons on 14 June 1945 the offer of March 1942 stand in its entirety without change or qualification. The reconstitution of the Governor-General's Executive Council was proposed to be done by nominating all of them except the Commander-in-Chief from amongst leaders of Indian political life. The Executive Council was to have a balanced representation of the main communities, including equal proportion of Muslims and caste Hindus. Lord Wavell called for a conference at Shimla in June-July 1945 to sort out an agreement between the Congress and the Muslim League. The Congress proposed to include 2 Congress Muslims out of this quota. Jinnah insisted that all Muslim members of the council must be nominated by the League. Lord Wavell announced a breakdown of the conference, giving the general impression that Jinnah had been given the veto to torpedo all constitutional advance in India. The next important event is the cabinet mission and the communal triangle. In the elections of 1945-46, the Muslim League captured an overwhelming majority of Muslim seats in all the provinces except the North-West Frontier Province. The Muslim League secured 75% of the total Muslim votes. The Congress party formed government in all the Hindu majority provinces and the North-West Frontier Province, while the League came in power in Bengal and Sindh. In the Punjab, a unionist ministry was formed, although the League was the single largest party. The elections demonstrated that the Muslim League was a strong political party in the country. The cabinet mission, comprising of Lord Pethick Lawrence, that is the Secretary of the State, and Sir Stafford Cripps, that is the President of the Board of Trade, and A.V. Alexander, that is the First Lord of Admiralty, reached India on 1st March 1946. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Attlee announced in the House of Commons that a minority could not be allowed to put a veto in on the advance of the majority. The cabinet mission rejected the demand for Pakistan and suggested instead a central government in charge of foreign affairs, defence and communication. It, however, conceded the Muslim League's demand halfway by grouping provinces in 3 groups, that is, Hindu majority provinces of Madras, Bombay, Central Provinces, United Provinces, Bihar and Orissa to form Group A, Muslim majority provinces of Punjab, North-West Frontier Province and Sindh to form Group B, and Bengal and Assam to form Group C. The full autonomy to the provinces and the provision for grouping gave to the Muslim League the substance of Pakistan. Further, the Cabinet Mission Plan laid down procedure for the election of a constitutional making body. In the election to the Constituent Assembly, the Congress won 199 of the 200 general seats. The League bagged 73 of the 78 Muslim seats. Jinnah maintained that the Congress, having support of 211 members of the total strength of 296 of the Constituent Assembly would place the Muslims at their mercy. He therefore demanded two constituent making bodies, one for the people of India and one for Pakistan. Next important event was the direct action and communal riots 1946 to 47. The Muslim League withdrew its acceptance to the Cabinet Mission Plan and observed 16th August 1946 as the direct action day. Direct action was not directed for wresting Pakistan from the hands of the unwilling British government, but was directed against the Hindus. The League engineered communal riots in Bengal, United Provinces, Bombay, Punjab, Sindh, and the Northwestern Frontier Province. In the interim government formed on September 2, 1946, under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, the Muslim League refused to join, later agreed to join on 26 October 1946, not to work it but to wreck it from inside. All the same, the Muslim League refused to join the Constituent Assembly. Then came Attlee's statement on 20th Feb 1947, which is the divide and quit policy. Prime Minister Attlee announced in the House of Commons the definite intention of the British government to effect the transference of power to responsible Indian hands by a date not later than June 1948. In the absence of the Muslim League's cooperation, the British government would have to consider to whom the powers of the central government in British India should be handed over on due date, whether as a whole to some form of central government for British India, or in some areas to the existing provincial governments, or in such other way as may seem most reasonable and in the best interest of the Indian people. Thus, the British government's decision to maintain some sort of unity of India underwent a change, and it veered round to the possibility of setting up Pakistan. The Mountbatten Plan of Partition of India, that is 3rd June 1947. Lord Mountbatten, who succeeded Lord Wavell as Viceroy of India in March 1947, offered a plan for the partition of India in his 3rd June 1947 announcement. The plan provided for a referendum in the Northwest Frontier Province to decide whether the province would join India or Pakistan. A referendum was to be held in the Muslim majority district of Sylhet, that is in Assam, to decide whether the district would join East Bengal or remain part of Assam. The legislative assemblies of Bengal and the Punjab were to meet each in two sections or parts, one representing the Muslim majority districts and the other the rest of the province, to decide by a simple majority whether the province was to be partitioned or not. The Hindu members of the Punjab and Bengal assemblies decided in favour of partition of those provinces. East Bengal and West Punjab decided to join Pakistan, while West Bengal and East Punjab joined India. The referendum in Sylhet district of Assam went in favour of Pakistan. The Northwest Frontier Province decided to join Pakistan. Finally, the Indian Independence Act and the partition of India. The Indian Independence Act, passed by the British government in July 1947, provided for the setting up of two independent dominions of India and Pakistan with effect from 15th August 1947. The Congress finally accepted the partition of India. Partition became inevitable because of the long-term failure of the Congress to draw in the Muslim masses into the national movement. The Congress leaders also felt that only an immediate transfer of power would forestall the spread of direct action and communal disturbances. The acceptance of partition in 1947 was thus only the final act of a process of step-by-step concession to the League's intransigent championing of a sovereign Muslim state. Therefore, 15th August 1947 dawned, revealing the dual reality of independence and partition. Now let us conclude. Communalism rose in India in the colonial period, leading to a rift between the Hindus and the Muslims. The All India Muslim League was established in 1906 with the motive of protecting the political rights of the Muslims who were in minority as compared to the Hindus. However, the Congress and the Muslim League came together for a short time during the non-cooperation movement, but soon they drifted apart due to their differences of opinion. This ultimately led to the two-nation theory, which was put up by the Muslim League in 1940. Finally, this communal rift led to the partition of India in 1947. Thank you.